5 overrated albums from 2015, a video no one asked for or probably wanted. June was a crazy month, right? But July has been pretty quiet. Like, there hasn't been major releases dropping out of nowhere, like consistently anyway, week after week. It's been a bit quieter, I must say. And so I thought I'd carry on my sort of series going back in the years where I look at overrated albums. I did this last year. In fact, I did 2 videos for last year. I guess I just found a lot of albums overrated in 2017, but I did, right at the start of the channel, do a video for 2016. So if you want to go back and look at that too, well, it wasn't right at the start, but it was pretty early on. And it's kind of fun riling people up. It is, when you talk about music. It's so fun just discussing and saying what you think's overrated and saying what you think's not that good and stuff. It's so much fun. So I'm going to do 5 albums from 2015, which potentially could piss you off. I'm sorry, but you know, let's talk about it in the comments and maybe we'll get an argument, get a fucking riot going. Starting with a pretty easy one, actually. No one talks about this album anymore. Well, the fans do, but you know, 2015 hasn't really seen this album live up to what the hype was back when it came out. But Beach House's Depression Cherry, probably their most bland album to date. I say this 3 years later when they've dropped their 7th album, 7, which I thought was okay, but nothing really too special. But yeah, Depression Cherry, man, had everything stripped away. That charm, that glistening, gorgeous sound, the melodies just seemed to disappear on that one, man. And the only good thing about it was the album cover, and I bought the CD as well, and it's so wonderful. It's just so furry. But it's a shame I never liked it, you know? Like, it's like the best thing to ever happen to album covers, period. And like, I don't even remember the album. Yeah, man. Indie critics fucking love Beach House, don't they? Like, does anyone realise that their best album is by far Teen Dream and they haven't really got anything close to that album? Like, I don't know why critics still jump on Beach House whenever they drop something. It's a very bizarre thing. Yeah, Depression Cherry, man, not an exciting album. Pretty dull, pretty standard for shoegaze and dream pop in general, actually. Really not doing much to the genre on this album. 7 again is better, but you know, still I feel like Beach House are doing the same over and over again, and Depression Cherry was the weakest that they had to offer. Next, I have discussed this one in podcasts. I've gone head to head with Buffalo Staple in regards to this album, but yeah, Tame Impala's Currents. This is a controversial one because I didn't really see much hate for this one when it came out, honestly. A lot of people loved it, and rightfully so. It generally has a soft sound across the whole thing. There's nothing too offensive going on here. I just felt like it was dabbling way too much in 80s nostalgia in a pretty uninteresting way to me. Tracks like Cause I'm a Man, just oversaturated in this falsetto that sounds horrific. And a lot of tracks on this album, man, really just were trying to stretch Kevin Parker's vocals. Even songs that I did like The Less I Know The Better, which I don't love, but I think is a pretty alright song. You know, his voice is just so shrill. It's not something that ever bothered me on Lonerism, but maybe it was because they switched up their sound slightly, which made the vocals a little bit more of the focus, possibly. Like, they became more of the vocal point of the album, and yeah, it really didn't do much for me. Pretty cheesy at times too, I thought this album was, especially with the sound. It was so just dripping in 80s nostalgia. I mean, they're obviously a nostalgic band. They've always been, you know, influenced by 60s psychedelia, but Currents was a change of pace which a lot of people wanted from the band. I'm sure if they tried dropping another Lonerism it would have failed, but the change of pace just didn't really do much for me. But before you come at me and like try and kill me or whatever, Let It Happen was absolutely one of the best songs of 2015 bar none. Like that was a top 20 song of the year. I freaking love that track. That just encapsulated everything that Tame Impala was trying to do on the album, and it just did it right for me anyway. But yeah, didn't see the hype for this one. I feel like this album shouldn't be on this list, but it is because people loved it, and I saw many critics call it like the top 5 albums of the year. I'm not going to mention names, but you know who you are. Chvrches, Every Eye Open. Why was this even like hyped? I don't get it. It was basically the debut album, but shinier and more pristine and more accessible for bigger audiences, and everything was super clean and super sparkly, and it just took away everything from the personality of the debut album. The debut album, which I can't say I'm a lover of, by the way, but by God, Recover, The Mother We Share, Gun, friggin' great songs. Like, I just feel like they never captured those tracks ever again. Even on the album that we got from them this year, which is by far worse than Every Eye Open. But I digress. I mean, I guess, saying that the production was super clean, super sparkly, super shiny isn't really a negative thing for some people. I know a lot of people, may prefer that kind of thing for their music, but this one was basically their way of saying, okay, we got successful on the first album, we're just gonna make things a bit cleaner so we get more radio play. And not only that, but this album just sounded the same all the way through. Like, I got past every song and just didn't think I was progressing through an album. Like, it just felt like a rehash of everything they kept doing before it. It worked for them, but yeah, Chvrches is one of those bands I'll never understand. I mean, they're fine at best. They're fine at best, and even their best album isn't even great in my opinion, but hey, we'll see how things go and see how the future remembers them. But yeah, I think they need to switch things up a bit, try something new. This album was just nah. Courtney Barnett, perhaps an artist that I've been pretty vocal about before, not particularly liking. But the interesting thing about sometimes I sit and think, sometimes I just sit, is that I actually started off loving this album, and then right at the end of the year, when I was doing my year-end list, I returned to the album and I was like, what the hell? It was a major epiphany, like to the point where I was like, God, I've hardly returned to this album all the year round, and now here I am returning to it and realising that it ain't all that. I get that her whole shtick is playing with this idea of mundane, daily, bland activities that kind of amount to more than it actually does. I get it all. But like, what do you expect? Do you expect everyone that hears this thinks this is something like incredible? Like, do you think that this is supposed to be a fine work of art? I mean, there's not much you can do with this idea. The least she could have done was amp things up the way she did on tracks like Pedestrian at Best. I mean, that had that same sort of, snarky sarcasm that the other tracks do, and that sort of mundaneness that the other tracks did, but it at least had a fun and like grungy, rocky instrumental that I really enjoyed, and again was one of my favourite songs of the year, just like with Let It Happen by Tame Impala. Every track was basically this wallpaper. I mean, like, it's nice, but nothing's going on. And yes, you did just see a mirror behind my head. I know, that's what it is. I have a mirror behind my head. I could take it down, but, I just forget every time I film, so what's the point? But yeah, I mean, vocally, I think there isn't much to Courtney Barnett, to be honest. I've heard way better singer-songwriter albums that have better vocalists, better instrumentation, and just outright more interesting lyricism. She appeals to that sort of indie critic which I don't really understand, because you can dig so deep to find these amazing female singer-songwriters that have so much to say. Suzanne Sunfer, off the top of my head, and yet no one bats an eyelid. But this random girl that says, you know, boring daily activities that anyone could come up with in 10 seconds is apparently our saviour. Saviour is probably the most stupid word I could have used there, but she has been heralded as this pinnacle of indie singer-songwriter music, and I just don't get it, man. You know, like I said, the same critics that will praise this probably haven't dug deep enough to even have much to say about other musicians out there that write way more interesting lyrics than she does. This is average run-of-the-mill music, man. Like, there's no colour, no flavour to most of these tracks, bar a few. I do quite like Depreston, but again, that had at least a good melody with it. But most of these songs have nothing at all. Finally, perhaps one that will annoy the most people, I don't even know, I feel like every album here could have potential to get people disagreeing, but this artist is pretty loved by a lot of hip-hop heads right now, and after his last album from last year, his success has only like tripled. But that is Vince Staples. Yeah, this 2-disc album, Summertime '06, didn't really grab me that much. I thought that he showed a lot of potential on his early EPs, Hell Can Wait, which I actually did really like back when it came out. But like on this one, I felt like nothing really came out of Vince that I was impressed with, to be honest. I honestly didn't really feel like there was much to the beats, the production. I mean, 2015 was a freaking great year for hip-hop, and this was by far the best that we got from 2015. Believe me, man. We had Czarface, Injury Reserve, friggin' Death Grips, and obviously Kendrick Lamar. I mean, Jesus Christ, Joey Badass as well. I've basically just given you your top 5 hip-hop albums of the year there, so if Vince Staples somehow made the cut on your list, then you gotta reshuffle it, man. Jesus Christ, it was not one of the better ones. The length wasn't really an issue to me, but I don't really feel like there was much to this album that justified the hour-long album. I mean, I feel like there was supposed to be some sort of underlying concept and theme to this, but Vince Staples was pretty young at the time, and I'm pretty sure that he realised that he had better things to come when he started doing the more experimental type production, you know, working with artists like Sophie and doing that harsher electronic type sound. Because on this one, again, the beats grow pretty stale like halfway through the album, and it doesn't really pick up. North North is like the best song here, and that basically became a meme because of the girl on YouTube, the mother, in fact, on YouTube, that did a bit of a reaction to this song because she heard it on the radio while she was in the car with her children or something, and she went apeshit about this, man. It was a great video, but shout out to her, man. I mean, you know, she was very misinformed on the hip-hop genre, but her intentions were good, so let's not bully her too much. And in 2015, there were a few albums I kept going back to make sure if I was right or if I was missing something, and one of them was Get to Heaven by Everything, and that ended up being my top 5 albums of the year. And the other album was this, Summertime '06. I kept going back to it. I remember being on a train ride as well, just playing it, just trying to focus solely on the album, just take everything else out of the equation, just sit and listen to the album. And yeah, nothing impacted me at all, so I just never really got the hype to this one. And Big Fish Theory is clearly a much better album than this, and even I have my issues with that album, so, you know, I think Vince Staples is only on the up at this point. I think he can eventually drop a great album, but I just personally feel like he's not quite there. And that's the end of the video. Sorry it's a bit dark now, it's starting to get dark a little bit over in the UK. Thank you for watching the video. Let me know your 5 overrated albums from this year that I'm talking about. Let me know your thoughts on these albums that I've talked about here. Subscribe to the channel for more reviews. Have a good day, and let it happen, let it happen.